Hey guys, it's Libby. I'm going to attempt to do my spring book haul, but there is some construction going on the roof of my condo building, so if the banging gets too obnoxious, I may finish this tomorrow. So I have managed to acquire 6 books this season. The first 3 were all from my darling spouse, David. Thank you, David. And it's quite an eclectic collection. The first one is hard science fiction. It's Seven Eves by Neal Stephenson. I know Neal Stephenson is quite popular on BookTube, but he first really caught my attention when he was a guest on a video of PBS's Space Time, which is a very good educational sort of space wibbly wobbly timey wimey show, and he was interviewed about like how we would deal with the world ending, and I was sort of inspired by this book. It's set 5,000 years in the future, assuming that around about our time something happened to make the Earth uninhabitable, and now like humanity has moved on to other planets, it's evolved, different stuff, and now some people are coming back to a very different and alien Earth. And I quite like the whole familiar things seen through new eyes concept. So let's read the first sentence. And I quite like the whole familiar things seen through new eyes as a thing to write about. I will of course read you the first sentence. What is it? The moon blew up without warning and for no apparent reason. The next book from David is The Lake House. Kate Morton is kind of my version of a beach read. It's fairly pulpy, but it's still literary fiction, and there's a little gothic twist that she manages to get in. A lot of her stories are sort of set either like someone in the modern day who's very old remembering their past, or someone in the modern day finding out about the past of a previous generation. I think Kate Morton's whole goal in writing her books is to get people to imagine their parents complexly. Like, it's really hard to think of your parents as like being real people who existed before you were born and like did things. Anyway, this book is set jointly in modern day and the 1930s. In the modern day, our main character is a woman named Alice who writes very popular mystery thrillers, and then at some point she gets like drawn into investigating an actual mystery, and it's the disappearance of a child in the 1930s, and I'm sure that she will go back to an old house and it will awaken memories of its residents, and I'm putting money on Alice being related to this family somehow. The first sentence is, "The rain was heavy now, and the hem of her dress was splattered with mud." And then the last book from David you probably also heard of. It is The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. I believe that is actually how you pronounce it because Irish. Emma Donoghue is most famous for writing the novel Room, which was recently turned into a film. She's written quite a number of novels. I've only read her collection of feminist fairy tale retellings called Kissing the Witch, which I absolutely loved. And a lot of the plot synopses of her books are very intriguing to me, but they always get really low ratings on Goodreads. So like the plot of The Wonder didn't seem as interesting to me as say Life Mask, but it got way better ratings. So I'm gonna start here. I'll probably still move on to some of her other works, unless this is utterly horrendous. So Lib Wright, our heroine, is a nurse, and she has been called to a village in Ireland to investigate the Wonder, which is this little girl who is not eating and like still managing to stay alive. So Lib is trying to ascertain whether or not she has actually stopped eating or whether she's like secretly eating at some point. And then if she has stopped eating, how is she staying alive? The first sentence of The Wonder is, "The journey was no worse than she expected." And then the next book I didn't exactly buy, nor was it exactly given to me. It is Snuff by Terry Pratchett, which is the last book that I was missing in my Discworld collection. So my mom, who has read a couple of the Discworld books, but only like 2 or 3 I think, saw this in a shop for cheaps somewhere, and she decided to get it, and she said, would it be okay if I just jumped right in with this one? And I was like, probably not, because this is at the end of the Ankh-Morpork City Watch series, so there's like 8 books or so that have come before it. You know who has all those books? Me. I should have this one too. I'm taking this. Okay, thanks, Mom. So this is about Captain Sam Vimes, who is the head of the Ankh-Morpork City Watch, and his wife has finally convinced him to take a vacation, but I'm sure that he will find some crimes to deal with even on his vacation. And I actually read the first couple of pages. I had to stop myself. I was just like, it would be really easy to just sort of keep reading this, but I did stop myself, and it seems like we get some more information about the orcs who we encountered in Unseen Academicals, which I quite liked. So I'm excited about this one. I've only read the first book of the Ankh-Morpork City Watch books, so I have quite a while before I get to this, but you know, knowing there's more orcs will power me through. The first sentence is, oh gosh, it has a word that Terry Pratchett made up, so I'm not gonna say it right. The goblin experience of the world is the cult or perhaps religion of Ungwe. And then the next book is one that I picked up in the foils at Paddington Station when I was in London. It is The 100 Nights of Hero by Isabel Greenberg. You may have heard of Isabel Greenberg because she wrote the graphic novel The Encyclopedia of Early Earth, which I know a lot of people liked, and I sort of investigated it, but I was like, this just isn't quite exactly what I'm looking for, but this one is more what I'm looking for. So I think if I can conveniently or cheaply acquire a copy of The Encyclopedia of Early Earth, I will pick it up. I'm saying this because I've finished this book by now. It's a pretty quick read. So my copy is actually a little bit special, and I'm going to show it to you like this. Yeah, so my copy was printed with the cover upside down and backwards. They actually knocked off £5, which, you know, I'll take it. I don't mind the cover being all funky. So I had to read it like this, and the other people on the airplane probably thought I was a complete idiot, but I'm not. It was just printed weird. So I'm gonna hold it like this just so you can admire the pretty picture while I tell you about it. So this is set in the same world as the Encyclopedia of Early Earth with the same gods, Birdman and his children, Kid and Kiddo. And this is a story about Hero and Cherry, who are in love with each other. Cherry is married to a very dumb man named Jerome, and Cherry is working as her maid so that they can be together. Jerome sort of gets involved in this bet with a thoroughly horrible man named Manfred, and he says, if you can seduce my wife, who is so pure and virtuous, then in 100 nights, then you can marry her and have my castle. So Manfred is like, sweet, sleeping with ladies and free castles. I'm into that. So he goes, and Cherry's really not excited about this. So she says, okay, you can come to bed, you can have sex with me, but first, before we do that, I just want my maid to come in and tell me a story. So Hero comes in and starts to tell a story, and it becomes very 1001 Arabian Nights. Manfred is so entranced by the story that he doesn't notice it as the night passes, and dawn comes, and she leaves on a cliffhanger, and so then the next night he just wants to hear more and more of the story. The art isn't like absolutely my favorite, but you know, it's nice. It seems like it was quick to draw, so she was able to do it at a reasonable time. The first sentence of it is, are you ready? And then the last book that I got is one I'm very excited to finally own. It's one of my favorite books, but I've actually never owned a physical copy. I've only listened to the audiobook, I wouldn't say dozens of times, but definitely a dozen times. It is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. You've probably heard of this because a movie just came out. I have seen the movie twice. It's not like perfect. It's not my platonic ideal of what an adaptation of this book would be, but it's still pretty good and you should go see it. So My Cousin Rachel is definitely the book that is most similar to Daphne du Maurier's most famous book, Rebecca, and Rebecca is my favorite book of all time. This is, like, if you don't think about it too hard, kind of a gender-flipped version of Rebecca, in that you have a young man who just gets in way over his head. The movie decided to set it in the 1840s, but in the book it's pretty much just set sometime before the popularization of the train. And it's about this man named Philip who was orphaned at a very young age, and so he's been raised by his older cousin Ambrose, and they live a very sort of manly bachelor lifestyle with messy dogs and eating with their hands, and they don't worry about all fancy lady things. And Ambrose goes away to Italy because he is ill and needs to get out of the cold English wind and rain. And he sends letters back to Philip, eventually saying that he's met this woman named Rachel, and then eventually saying that he's marrying this woman named Rachel, and then ultimately saying, I'm actually really, really sick and I think it's Rachel's fault. Please come help. So Philip immediately goes off to Italy to find Ambrose is dead and Rachel has disappeared. It's, oh god, it's so good. I love it so much. The first sentence, it's quite dramatic, really. They used to hang men at 4 turnings in the old days. And then I desperately want to go on and keep reading the next bits to you, but we would be here all day if we waited for me to find a good stopping place. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you can't hear all of the whining of the drills above my head. I will see you again very soon.